Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. So, whenever I come across a B2B brand that has a podcast, it kind of warms my heart because, I know that podcasting is a great marketing channel for B2B, but still only around 25% of B2B brands have a podcast. But when I come across a B2B brand and a business owner that is doing podcasting, I'm like, this is somebody who gets it. And that is true for my guest for this episode, Alan Silvestri. He is owner and CEO of a company called Growth Gorilla, which is a content promotion and distribution agency. And as part of his marketing, Alan has a podcast, and it has one of the great podcast titles that I've come across, honestly. It's called Promote or Die! Exclamation point. So Alan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jeremy, and yeah, glad you like the name.
My first question is, why did you start a podcast?
Yeah, so I guess the main reason is because I feel like we are good at what we do, but the problem is that we need more brand awareness. That's the number one reason, I guess. I wanted to kind of spread the word about what we do because I think we're good, again, and because I think we're quite unique in what we do. So yeah, the main thing is brand awareness. But then since I got the idea of doing a podcast all centered around content promotion, then yeah, I got a couple of other goals in there, like talking about all the different types of promotion and not just what we do, which is more link building content promotion. I was seeing a friend of mine that has another agency that started a podcast last year and it's going really well for them. There's a lot of other people in my network that have started a podcast in the last year or so. So yeah, I decided basically why not us as well.
So what does your production process look like?
Yeah, so I try to record as many episodes as I can in advance to get like a backlog, so that I don't find myself one week and I don't have anything to publish. So that's the first thing. Try to get a backlog of episodes so that you can kind of like stay calm and do everything that you need to do, get more guests slowly and in time. But then in terms of production, is once I recorded the episode, I record with Riverside, like you guys do. Then what I do is I download the audio for the two separate tracks and the video for both guests together from Riverside. And then I put them into the script. That's another tool that's very good. It gives you the transcript for the audio so that then you can edit using the transcript itself. So you don't have to look at basically at the audio wave, so you can just use the transcript to take out bits of text, parts that you don't want to have. You can also mute words or like sounds like like things like that. You can mute them. It's like an automatic process, so that's super cool. Then I export that and I create my final composition in Logic on the Mac. That's our music recording software, where essentially I add my intro, my music for the beginning and the outro, which I have pre-recorded. So yeah, this is how I compose the episode. And then what I do is I have this checklist that's mainly for getting stuff out there for the distribution. So I use Buzzsprout to upload the podcast and to get it onto all the directories. Then I create a blog post for each of the episodes. In the blog post, I typically have the player, I have the main takeaways, and then I have the transcript as well as the YouTube video, because I also post the video on YouTube. Yeah. And then I also have a couple of other tricks up my sleeve that I use. So for example, I use ChatGPT to get the main takeaways. So I copy the podcast transcript into ChatGPT. So obviously you can't copy the full thing in one go. You have to give it like the first quarter and then the second quarter, like in 3 times usually. And then it spits out like 5 to 10 takeaways, which is actually like pretty good, like pretty accurate. So then what I do is I double check them, I read them, make sure that they make sense with what the guest actually said. And that saves me a ton of time instead of like having to re-listen to the full episode, to get the main takeaways out. That's a lot of time saved. And then the other thing is I use Canva to create all of the social media graphics, the YouTube, the feature images and all that stuff. So I created 4 or 5 that are the main ones: the blog, YouTube, a Twitter one, a LinkedIn one, and then I have one that's like an audiogram, right? So the animated kind of images where I put the like a snippet of the voice, right? So I have all of those, and so the only thing I need to do is change the guest profile photo
Right.
in there for every episode. Just export everything and put everything in a folder, and that's done. I also send the podcast every week to my newsletter for the agency. We don't have a ton of subscribers, but it's like basically I wasn't doing anything with it. It was just sitting there, and I wasn't really posting anything, as like maybe a couple of new articles every time we would post something. But now I have this weekly cadence that I can use for the podcast, but also for other things. Like this morning, for example, I sent out today's episode, but while I was there, one of my own podcast interview got live today, so I sent that together with my podcast, and then a couple of other, like maybe updates on the agency, what we're up to, right? So having the podcast is also helping me in creating this schedule, like weekly schedule, that I can use to put something out there for the newsletter, which is always pretty good to cultivate.
Now, how do you go about finding guests?
So guests, I have a specific process that I follow. What I do is, first off, I want to test a segment for specific podcast types, right? So for example, I choose that I want to reach out to B2B SaaS podcasts. So what I would do is I go into iTunes, for example, and I type SaaS. Then it will give me all the different SaaS podcasts out there. What I do then is I open the ones that kind of inspire me, maybe, and then I see, first off, if they're still publishing a podcast, because I want to know if they're active, because chances are if they're not, maybe they stopped doing the podcast. If that's a yes, then I go into the website. So if they have a website, then what I do is I do a search using Google, using the advanced search operator, which is site : plus their site plus my topic. So my topic is usually content promotion or link building. So that gives me an idea of whether they already talked about my topic or not. So then what I do is I use that in my email template, which is usually goes something like this. Hey, I was just listening to your interview with name, and typically here I mention one of the latest episodes, just to give them like an idea of the fact that I'm like an active listener of the podcast. And then I can be like, I noticed that you've been talking about this topic and this topic that are related to my topic. So maybe content strategy, content marketing. But one topic that I noticed you haven't talked a lot about is content promotion or link building. And then I'm like, which is what I do for companies like blah, blah, blah. And then I do a little bit of name drop that always helps. And so after that, I can be like, so I'd love to have the opportunity to be a guest, to help you teach your audience how, and then something that I might be able to teach to their audience that's specific to the podcast, maybe, you know. And yeah, that's typically it.
So what would be your advice to, say, a B2B marketing team that's thinking about doing a podcast?
I would say something that really helped me with mine so far, even though we're super early, is finding a gap in the in the podcast market, you know, because what I did is I noticed that there were a lot of podcasts on content marketing, SEO, content strategy, marketing in general, but there were not a lot of podcasts on content promotion itself, which is what we do. So I think that's been a very good kind of takeaway. Find a gap in the market that fits within what you do.
Alan, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, so the best way is the website, mygrowthgorilla.com, or you can find me and reach out to me on Twitter at Alan G. Gorilla. And also I'm on LinkedIn. I don't typically use that a lot. I mostly use Twitter, but yeah, those are the main points.
Okay, excellent. Well, everyone, check out the podcast Promote or Die. Take that advice to heart. Promote or die. It's your choice. And also check out, we're going to put links to everything in the show notes, to your business, Growth Gorilla, which, by the way, folks, it has a really cool and awesome 80s design to it. So Alan is the real deal when it comes to 1980s stuff. He's got the DeLorean, the movie posters, and the
Thank you.
website design. Yeah, we'll put links to all that good stuff. And Alan, thank you so much. Always awesome to talk to a fellow podcaster, and thanks for your time and your insights.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.